What is up, people? You are listening to New Generation Hero Talk. I am your host, EJ Stewart. We're back with another movie review. It's always exciting when you're able to do essentially back-to-back movie reviews. A couple weeks ago, our Superman review after the DC Superman came out. Now, 2 weeks later, we have Marvel's Fantastic Four First Steps. This is the introduction to Marvel's first family to the MCU, and there's a lot to get to with this movie. Kendall joins me. Shamari unable to make it today. Just feeling a little under the weather, so we wish Shamari well. He'll be back in no time. But Kendall and I will be rocking to you for this time, talking about Fantastic Four. And we'll give you guys some of Shamari's thoughts later on. But Kendall, similar to Superman, it feels like this was a long time coming. In many ways, longer than Superman. Remember, this was one of the movies that was unveiled 5 years ago. What was that? Disney Investor Day was that, or was that Comic-Con?
Yes, that was Disney Investor Day.
Disney Investor Day 5 years
Disney
ago.
Disney Plus Day, I think it was.
Disney Plus Day, yes, I remember that. Disney Plus Day, yeah, that was crazy. That was a pandemic time. Yeah. Disney Plus Day, when they announced all these different new shows that were coming out, it was a massive drop, and Fantastic Four was one of them. Now it looks nothing like what we have now. Like, the director is different.
John Watts is making the movie.
Yeah, the director is different. Logo is different. Vibe different. Everything different. But we finally did get Marvel's Fantastic Four movie, the first one that Marvel Studios has been able to do. And I'm excited what you guys say about it.
Yeah, I know. I mean, this was truly one of those movies where you're sitting down and you're like, man, I can't believe we're finally here, right? Like,
yeah,
you know, and we'll get to that feeling, I'm sure, when the Marvel's X-Men comes out finally, Jake Schreier, whenever that gets unveiled. But this is, like you said, long time coming, and then obviously going even further back into when they bought the rights back from Fox, and then going even further back to the last terrible Fantastic Four movie, which was 10 years ago. So they've it's been 10 years since we've had a Fantastic Four movie drop.
Yeah.
It's been 10 long years of waiting for hopefully a good iteration, a good version of these characters. And man, I mean, we'll talk about it in more depth, but shout out to Matt Shakman, Kevin Feige, and then that whole staff and cast that, put together I thought, clearly the best Fantastic Four movie that we've ever had. Not much of a hot take. I think we could have said that based off the trailers, but certainly.
Yeah, I mean, Kendall, listen, it's funny you mentioned the 10-year long wait. For me, it feels even longer because I just never bothered with that F4 movie. Like, we never went to the theaters to see it. I never saw it.
Fan-forsting.
Yeah, I never watched the full version of the movie. Remember I told you I took a flight. I forgot where I was flying to, but I flew somewhere and I watched the first half of the movie, and it was so dreadful, which we always joked on this podcast, is a running joke, that I watched the quote-unquote good half of Fox's last Fantastic Four movie. And I was like, I have no interest in finishing the rest of this. This is insanely terrible. And apparently things get a lot worse after that. I never got to it. So this was, in many ways, for me, feels even longer. It feels like I haven't really seen a Fantastic Four movie since The Rise of the Silver Surfer. And it's very ironic, of course, that this is, of course, a movie that features the Silver Surfer quite heavily. So, yeah, it definitely was a long time coming. And, for Marvel, it does speak to the importance of having Marvel's Fantastic Four in the MCU. I mean, they are a tentpole group, family, team, or whatever you want to call them, all the above, for Marvel. It didn't feel right. It didn't feel the same not having Reed Richards, Sue Storm, Ben Grimm, Johnny Storm, Baxter Building, now Franklin Richards, Herbie. Having all of that now in the MCU makes Marvel Cinematic Universe feel much more whole in the way that it had not. And I think that this movie, to me, definitely highlighted how much of a missing gap that was. So let's get to it, man. Fantastic Four, First Steps. This was a movie directed by Matt Shakman, a stellar cast that includes, Vanessa Kirby playing Sue Storm, Pedro Pascal playing Reed Richards, Joseph Quinn playing Johnny Storm, Human Torch, You got Julia Garner playing Silver Surfer, Ralph Ineson playing uh, Galactus, and I'll say this, man. Um, I thought this movie was really solid. I thought they did a really good job. By the way, even Moss Baccarat also playing, of course, thing. I thought this movie was really solid. I really enjoyed this film. Like I posted on social media, I feel like this film felt the most phase one type movie that Marvel has dropped in a very long time. I don't know if it's because of the fact that this was a movie that was set in a different, time, this being in the 60s, albeit on a different Earth. And of course, we had Captain America that was set in the World War II era, so maybe that was some of that feel. Um, but this felt as
I
close
think
to one of those Phase One movies that we've had to me in a little bit. Sorry, what you say?
no, I was just gonna say real quick. I think it was more about the being in a different universe than it was the timeline.
I
But
I
I'll
think
expand
that's
on that
I
when you
think
get to
that's
that.
I think that that's a great point. I just want to get to that. I'm
Because
still
like
talking
Captain
about
Marvel, right, is the example of
right.
another period piece
Right.
that
No, I
didn't
think
have
you're
that
totally
vibe.
right. Yeah, this was a world. This is an entirely different world where you don't have any expectations about what's happening. You don't know anything about it, so you're taking everything at face value. I think that was a strength of Phase One that you really can't really duplicate unless you literally just make it a movie in a new world, which they did, and maybe that's something they thought about. Other movie can. I think Guardians of the Galaxy is probably the closest to it, but they're not an actual family. So, and they're in many ways a dysfunctional family. This was not necessarily a dysfunctional family at all. They have their issues. They have things that they're trying to work through, whatever. But they're not. It's a totally different situation. I looked at this and I think that they hammered home the family aspect and they bang you over the head with it. And I say that in the best way. I don't say that in a way that's like, oh, it was got tiresome or whatever. It was like you're not. At no point in the movie are you forgetting or losing sight of the fact that these are people that are all super close, literal blood in some instances. Of course, there's a marriage, and then Ben and Reed are almost like brothers. How close they are, and everything and how they react to each other and how they talk and how they decide things all comes with that family aspect, and I think it's executed really well. I think this movie is really boosted by I think some really great just individual character acting in terms of nailing a casting of a Fantastic Four. They just nailed it. It's crazy. I think you could maybe argue of the four, maybe Reed was the one that was most, and it's not like Pedro was bad, but at all he was phenomenal. But I think it seems to me just I know how great the other three were, particularly Vanessa Kirby, who I don't know if a lot of folks really were expecting her to stand out so much as Sue Storm, but she was phenomenal. And I think Joseph Quinn, and honestly, both Storms. I think both a lot of folks were kind of questioning how those casting would go, and I think that they were probably the two best elements of the team. But the whole casting as a group, they all were great. And I think what helped this movie as well is Marvel actually got some villains right for the first time. Uh, we know the disaster that was Galactus in the Rise of the Silver Surfer movie. I was telling my fiance Andrea about how because I think she said she saw it, but she didn't remember anything about it. I was like, that was a movie where Galactus was a cloud, and she was like, how the hell did he get away with that? And I said, your question is as good as mine. I don't know how we let get away with that, but that was a different time period where us fans didn't have the kind of power that you normally would. Where we even had a whiff of something that happened, they would have to literally remake the movie. That's how much power we have now. We didn't have that power back then. And that was her not even knowing anything about Galactus, but seeing this movie, enjoying this movie, and then being like, wait, he was a cloud? How the hell did that happen? But this was a movie really bolstered by great villains. I think it was crazy to me to watch Galactus in a superhero movie. I was like, this feels like I'm reading a comic book. This is insane. Like the way they scaled his size, his dialogue, just everything about him. I was like, this is crazy. This is legit Galactus. And there was obviously going to be the controversy about making Shia LaBeouf this version of Quicksilver, Jesus, Silver Surfer, as opposed to Norrin Rad. I feel like you watch this movie, you kind of can let that go in 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Like you kind of forget about it at that point. You take it at face value pretty quickly. I think to me also them highlighting this as another Earth also kind of made me kind of take me out of like Norrin Red having to be the Silver Surfer. I thought Julia Garner was really good in her role, and I also thought shout out to the visual effects team. They it maybe took them to the finish line, but they figured it out. You know, all the issues about the PS2 graphics we saw in some of those trailers, they clearly were working day and night to make sure this looked as good as possible. And it did. It looked really, really good. That's an extremely hard character to pull off. And they made it work. So all those elements were really solid, man. I really like this movie. You know, we'll get into some nitpicks in the movie. I did feel like, you know, it was very interesting to see a movie where the movie peaks, I feel like, in the second act. The second act is insane. The second act is one of my favorite acts probably I've seen in a Marvel movie in a really long time. So it's kind of weird to come from that, and you have a final act that was good. And at first act that was good, but then you have this middle act that's so insane. It's like, it's kind of a weird structure, you know, in terms of maybe how I feel. And I almost wonder, had, you know, it just been reversed and maybe the first act was amazing, the third act was amazing, maybe I'd feel even better about the movie. But overall, this was a really solid movie, and I think a good step to where Marvel was going. I'm not going to sit here, you know, I told you guys, I came out and say Superman was a classic. And I'm not trying to make this a Superman comparison. You know, that's going to be natural when we have these conversations. I'm not going to sit here and when you say, oh, this was an absolute classic, but this was a really solid movie. This, to me, along the lines of a Spider-Man Homecoming, a Guardians of the Galaxy 1, like, you know, those kind of films, I think we look at and say, we think about, like, solid Marvel movies that kept the brand going. This, to me, fits in that realm. So, or Captain America, you know, First Avenger, again, that's kind of the range is in. Maybe not beating that, you know, Civil War, you know, Endgame, Infinity War level, but that solid level of these solo movies that really did the job. Maybe not Black Panther, but this was a really good one. I really enjoyed this. And by the way, as we, you know, I do it every show. Of course, this is a spoiler review, right? You know, so I didn't give any spoilers in this little brief opening, but of course, this is a spoiler discussion. So if you're not trying to get spoiled, you know, this was a time to go and watch the movie, then come back and listen to the podcast. Or again, of course, if you understand that you want to hear our thoughts and hear how we talk about the film and all the different plot points, and you want to make that be your decision to want to go to the film, or simply you just want to hear us talk about it, knowing that you may not ever see this film. You want to see what we think about it, of course, you can hang out, but I just want to make sure we have that disclaimer, of course, that this is a spoiler discussion. But anyway, Kendall, what are your initial thoughts on Fantastic Four First Steps?
I think you hit the nail on the head on a lot of different points. You know, one, I mean, again, on your initial point that, you know, about the time period, like, and the setting, creating this new world. I mean, I think that's something that we saw really give us just so much of an open canvas for things to pop up and characters. We don't have to ask, oh, where is this person? Why is that person not doing this? Even if you say, oh, it's the 1960s, but it's in the MCU, you know, then we're gonna be asked, oh, so what is guys? How does it connect to Shield, right? Or how does it connect to, you know, I don't know, the Winter Soldier Project and all these different things that
it's happening in New York. It's happening in New York. What's going on with Spider-Man? What's going on with, you know,
right? Exactly.
You know, Daredevil now, and, you know, Avengers.
Right.
And, you know, there's so much.
Right. And so, and also, like, because we've seen the MCU, like, there's it being in its own universe and having that retro futuristic thing of, like, yeah, it's kind of Jetsons-y, and it was retro, but because, you know, it helps you have Reed Richards, right? So it's all believable, right? Because we know anything he creates, he can do anything, basically, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's like Mr. Terrific in the Superman movie, but, like, we're you know, it's believable that, yeah, he can create stuff that can, you know, transport a planet, right? Or transport,
right, exactly.
Teleportation technology, right? You're not like, oh, like, if you do that in the MCU and it's in the 1960s, we're gonna be like, I don't know, right? Like, Shield,
yeah, I'm like,
Shield didn't have that.
Yeah, 20 years ago, I saw, you know, they were trying to figure out what the hell the Tesseract was, and, you know, and Red Skull had a 3-1 lead on the U.S. Army.
Right.
Like, you know, it was like, now 20 years later, they haven't got to move planets. Like, that doesn't seem like, that seems like
and then you fast forward 30 years and, like, we're going crazy about Hank Pym's, shrinking technology. I'm like,
Right. Yeah.
this. I feel like we've already passed this point. Like we've
Yeah.
already
Yeah.
done more than they would have had to nerf Reed Richards at that point. So they're better off like saying, yeah, we're gonna put this in a new world. It's gonna make sense because he's super smart. So it'll still be high tech, and he's 50 years above any of the stuff we've got, even in our world. Like, but it still had that retro feel, and it still felt new. Um, you talk about the Superman comparisons, and one of the things both movies did so well, I credited Superman when we did our review of that, is they did an awesome job with, again, like you mentioned, the casting, right, and understanding the assignment when it came to each of the four major characters in this movie, right?
Yeah.
Um, what you needed out of a Reed, what you needed out of a Sue, what you needed out of a Johnny, and a Ben, and not only like from a casting perspective, but you can get a casting right. I think the casting for the first movie was really well done, right? Even the Fox 2015 one wasn't the cast wasn't awful. It wasn't great, but it wasn't awful. But regardless of a good cast, you can write a terrible movie, right? You cannot understand how to write the characters
Oh, for sure.
you've
Yeah.
casted. And this movie understood how to give us things that those other movies didn't, right? In the original Fantastic Four movies, which again I thought had an excellent cast, um, the the relationship between Ben and Reed is kind of understated, right? They don't really highlight it that much. It's there, but like you don't feel like Michael Chiklis and Ian, Groffel, like those guys are like, uh, you'll feel that brotherly thing, right? And in
Right.
this
Yeah.
movie, they have plenty of moments between Pedro and Evan Moss Baccarat where that happens, right? Whether it be through flashbacks or whether it be through current day.
Yeah.
Like I think the relationship. I think one of the highlights of those original movies was the Chris Evans Michael Chiklis chemistry, right?
Right. Definitely.
And this movie had some of that in there as well. But the relationship between Johnny and Sue, in both movies, both original movies, wasn't really that important. I think even the second movie did a decent job of it, but this movie, I think, was incredible in terms of having moments of that as well. And again, it's four characters. It's hard, right, to have four characters that all have their own personal dynamics with each other that like have to all get screen time and highlighted while also having to develop villains and having to develop a plot and make a movie, right? So it's not an easy job. And these are things that like, these kind of like the Guardians, like these are things that are going to get grown over time, right? After
Yeah.
we see these characters in Doomsday, if we see these characters in a sequel and however else, like even we're going to get even more moments with these characters um, that'll help to cement like the chemistry of these actors. But yeah, no, I mean, I think that also shout out to Joseph Quinn, right? I mean,
Massive.
he got a lot of heat. I was part of the brigade being like, I don't know about this casting and the trailers. It looks a little goofy. The haircut, I'm not really feeling it. But and then he had the comments where he was like, yeah, we're not we're not gonna be like misogynist like Chris Evans, Johnny Storm, and it's like, okay, what are we doing here? And then you watch the movie and you're like, that was all this stuff was so overblown, right? I mean, even his comments about Chris Evans were totally over, and we said that at the time, right? We were like, it's a very, very, very good chance we're gonna watch the movie and be like, he didn't have to say this at all. Right,
Yeah.
and it's kind of like it's kind of like we talked about the kid Hudson Thames that played Spider-Man in Friendly Neighborhood, and he had his comments about that show, and then we watched it. We were like, I don't even know if he knew what he was watching, right? I kind of feel like that with Joseph Quinn, where I'm like, I don't think it's that different than the character you were talking about, but no, still, I mean, I thought he did an excellent job, and again, really well written Johnny Storm, right? Like the last two,
Definitely.
I mean, Chris Evans was incredible, right? And Michael B. Jordan was really good. But the writing in those movies is just, and that's maybe what Joseph Quinn is hitting on, but like, no pun intended. But the like the writing is far better for this character in this movie than it's been in any other iteration of Johnny Storm. And so, again, credit to that entire team. But yeah, no, I mean, between just that's the thing I want to highlight the most is the just the four, right? Like that's the most important part
Yeah.
that they had to get right because these are not just a one movie project for them, right? Like this is going to be the characters we see in Doomsday, and then who knows what the deal is with Secret Wars, but and then after, obviously, whatever reset, we're probably going to have these same four characters.
Yeah, man. And I'll say this: I feel like when you talked about Johnny Storm, it goes back to one of my favorite aspects of this movie that it really drives home that the other movies did not. And at times the comics have not or have and have not, depending on iterations, um, is they really drove home why all four of these people are involved in being, space astronaut scientists. Like I think for a lot of, the time we see these other movies, it's like, oh, Reed's a smart guy, and then he's got these three other people. He's got his girlfriend, and he's
Right,
got the girlfriend's brother and his friend. Like it doesn't, you
right.
don't feel like,
It's not realistic.
you
Yeah,
don't, yeah, because like you're talking about sending these people out into space to have some like crazy space mission. Like you can't
right,
have any dead weight. And no, and
right.
even in some
Now I
instances
will
where
now
maybe,
to be fair, nowadays we're sending Michael Strahan and
well,
Jeff
yeah.
Bezos out into space,
Yeah,
but
man. Gail King and Katie
yeah,
Bradford. I don't.
but back in the '60s, no, that wouldn't
Yeah,
have been
and
that would
for
have
like
flown.
actual like space exploration in regard to like actually trying to learn something, not just taking a little
Right,
vacation up in space. You can't take anybody that has dead weight, especially a 4-man mission. Like it's not like, oh, there's
right,
other scientists on this thing. This is a 4 of them. So I really
yeah,
loved about what this movie established early on and throughout is that yes, Reed is the smartest person on the planet by far, but
the
all
Thing is super
four,
smart in this movie, which is
yeah,
awesome.
all four have big reasons to be in this group. Nobody is
Yes,
there
they
just
all
to
know what they're talking about.
yeah, Ben Grimm is like, I mean, he's basically an astronaut. Like the guy, like the way he
Yes,
knows flight, the way he knows gravitational pull when it came to black holes,
yes,
and like
rocket science. Yeah,
rocket science. Like this guy, he knew what he was talking about. I mean, and the big one was Johnny Storm. Like how many times is like Johnny Storm looked at as just like the guy who's out there to just make comic relief and make jokes. And like
yeah,
they play on that expectation of us for Johnny in the movie in a way that's very strong. Because like when he's
right.
saying, "Hey, I think I got something with this like weird language
That's
this
my
woman is
favorite.
speaking,"
I think that's my favorite scene in the movie. Like, I
when he
mean,
gets
my
it,
favorite is the introduction, right? The start of the movie, but like my favorite like character scene is that scene where he's trying to tell them that like he's
yeah,
got something, and
yeah,
they're all like, "Ah, oh, it's just Johnny being, oh, he don't got nothing," blah blah blah, yeah,
yeah,
and they're just not listening to him. And then like the next scene, Sue goes to him, speaks to him one on one, and is like, "So you say you have something, right?" And because she knows him, right? She knows him better than the
right,
others do. And then he
yeah,
then just he gets it out, right? And
right,
he's almost like he's more comfortable to get it out to her, and she realized like, oh yeah, you really did have something, right?
yeah,
And as the audience, like you said, we're playing into the thing of like, he doesn't have anything, right? Like, especially because they
yeah,
even showing that thing, he's been listening to it, and you're like, there's nothing there. Like, what's the connection? And then when he explains it, you're like, oh yeah, this is like you said, as the audience, you're the rest of them. You're like, yeah,
right.
this doesn't make any sense until he lays it out. But it just again played into the dynamics between the four of them, but then also the interpersonal dynamics that they have with each other.
Yeah, I mean, no question that scene really emphasized just how much value Johnny had to the team, right? Because he's able to think outside the box and in a way that the other rest of them wouldn't have, but still showed his intelligence, right? Because it takes intelligence to translate an alien language. Now he may be doing it in part because he's so fascinated by this alien woman, but still, like to do what he did shows a how intelligent he is, and also b like how much like the missions are important to him. Like sometimes Johnny can be like depicted as like a guy who's kind of like doesn't care really about the details of my mission. It's just like I'm gonna show up and just blow some stuff up and then run up and fly away. Like I actually like that they added that element to his character again. I mean, Ben is like a rocket scientist basically, and what he's able to bring to the table, what Susan's been able to bring to the table. The whole team is just again. Reed is obviously the smartest guy, but I thought making it the team had value made sense. And what I was saying before was like this like it's very clear that this team is them. Like they are the greatest heroes on planet Earth. and like you had to make it believable, right? Like this is an Earth that doesn't have an Avengers, doesn't have Spider Man, doesn't have all these other people. So like, but you see how much the team is almost like worshipped and hero worshipped and idolized for what they've been able to do, and you see like their successes in the opening act. We could talk about it, but like I think like this whole movie emphasizes like, oh yeah, this is why they're the greatest heroes on Earth. Look how smart they are. Look at what they're able to do as a team, and look how much versatility they have. Like they all make each other better, and I thought that showing the intelligence of the whole team was like that. And the fact that they were talking about a guy who eats planets, and like they had no like fear. They was like, oh yeah, we're just gonna go up there. We're gonna talk to him. Like you would think like, yo, this like it's Galactus. Like they don't know obviously who Galactus is, but I think it spoke to like, oh yeah, we faced a bunch of things before, and also the world having complete confidence that they'll just figure it out. Like a herald comes and they're like, oh yeah, we're gonna eat your planet, and then like oh, it's sending the Fantastic Four. They're gonna go up there and just figure it out. And the fact that they come back and they actually don't, they haven't won. They oh yes, how'd you beat Galactus? They're just assuming that like this thing is just done. For me, it's like oh we did it. Like
I mean, going into it right, like Ben's like, so am I just gonna go in there and punch on him, right? Like they thinking that they could just go in there and he's just gonna be some big guy that they could beat up.
They thought they thought they were gonna genuinely sweep Galactus. So it shows again just how strong they are as a team.
Right, exactly, and like that plus obviously the feel and the era and everything like kind of gave a bit of like the Incredibles vibe that people wanted to see, where it did have that cartoony nature of like, we're just superheroes that go in and we save the day, right? And again, that's why I like that intro so much, because one, it was just an excellent showcase of their powers, right? I mean, you forget like, because again, the Fantastic Four are often like looked at as this goofy, campy group, and it's been so long since we've had the Fantastic Four in like, in a movie, and it's been so long since we've had them in a watchable movie, and like to see them in that capacity, it shot really well. All these different things, obviously all the villains that they featured in that, like, and also what I loved about it was how many of these movies do we watch, these superhero movies, especially the sequels, right? Because obviously origin movies are a little different, but how many of these sequel movies do we watch and we say, what's this guy been doing the whole time, right? Like, has he only fought two villains? Like, he's only fought the first movie and the second movie, and this movie, similar to Superman, established that like, no, this is just something they do, right? It's an everyday thing for them. And Galactus is like, this was a special situation that deserved its own movie, right? Everything else is like a TV show.
This was a legacy game,
right? Exactly.
Yeah. They've already won 3 championships, but this is a legacy game.
Yes, and so they so to do it in that manner and to have it, have the monologue attached to it, and obviously the music playing, and it's also just serves as a great reminder, because obviously the Fantastic Four, just like Spider-Man is a little different than Spider-Man, but I don't know how they did it. But Spider-Man obviously being a character we had seen movies before, they're like, we don't have to do the origin again, like, and they just threw him in Civil War and we assumed everybody knew who Spider-Man was. And this, it's like the Fantastic Four, we've had multiple iterations, but everybody knows who they are, but like they're not Spider-Man, so we gotta give them a brief explanation because their power sets and everything is so unusual that you have to explain it. The other thing this movie does so well is, and we touched on it a little bit, it's just the space aspect of it, right? Because I was somebody that didn't want to see a space Fantastic Four movie. Not like ever, but like I didn't think that they should start off in that manner, right? I didn't really think Galactus was a smart move as the first villain. I thought that was a stretch, no pun intended. But I thought that was a stretch of an idea. But it worked, right? And they turned it into a space movie without it being like goofy, right? Like it was, it played more Interstellar. It played more, Space Odyssey, more kind of trying to be more of a realistic, like you said, more like an astronaut movie than like we're gonna go and traveling through the Star Wars, or exactly,
Guardians,
traveling, right? Guardians, like yeah, I was a little concerned. So I'm like, I don't need to see the Fantastic Four going on all these different planets and fighting aliens and all that. At least not yet. But
Hmm.
but again, this worked. It was grounded while still being a space movie. Again, that timeline obviously helps because only but you can only be but so you can only do but so many crazy things during a 1960s timeline. So yeah, um, they those elements worked a ton. I mean, even you mentioned the female Silver Surfer thing, like that was something that obviously was met with controversy. But in hindsight, we watched the movie, like it makes sense, right? And that, a lot of the times when you see these movies, you do end up saying to yourself, "I understand why they made that decision," especially with good movies, maybe not with bad ones. But when it came to the Shia LaBeouf thing, like one, I mean, let's just be honest. I know people are going to say, "Oh, this is woke or whatever," but like the movie, there's a lot of men in it, right? So
Right.
it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, there's Sue Storm, and then you throw in Shia LaBeouf, and it just makes sense, right? If you throw in a Norrin Rad, it's like, well, now there's Sue's the only female like character that shows up really, um, and but you throw in Shia LaBeouf, and that obviously balances it out a little bit. But then beyond that, um, it also like makes sense because again, if you're doing the Johnny Storm angle, making her female, or it adds a layer to that where again it adds a sense of humor, obviously, but it makes the story make a little bit more sense, right?
Yeah.
Because there's versions of the Silver Surfer thing. A lot of the times, the Silver Surfer thing with the Fantastic Four is some sort of guilt trip. We're I'm guilty. I shouldn't be doing this. Blah blah blah. I'm a good person, but I'm working for Galactus, and they try and appeal to the uh, the human side of Norrin Rad, the non-human human side of Norrin Rad. But the uh, in this, like, and you sometimes it's the thing or it's the thing's girlfriend that's blind that
Yeah.
it has a connection with Silver Surfer and convinces him that humanity is worth saving and all that stuff. But in this, it was a Johnny Storm thing, right? And they played into it and it worked, right? But so again, there are things that were said on this movie, kind of like he talked about Superman, where he said people were lying about this movie, right? And some of the things we were saying about it, some of the concerns we had, people were saying Sue Storm was the lead of the movie, and that was a controversy going into it. And I didn't really get that vibe. She's important. They're all four of them are important, but I'd say most of it's told from Reed Richards' perspective, which is um, how a Fantastic Four movie should be told.
Yeah, I feel like some of the things we hear when we hear this person's lead, whatever, or this person drives a movie before a movie comes out, we gotta take a lot of that stuff with a grain of salt. Because I would argue that Sue is the heart of the movie. I argue that Sue is the breakout performer in the movie. I wouldn't say she's the leader of the team, but when you have third party folks trying to explain bits and pieces of a movie that they haven't seen yet, you get these hyperbolic headlines that come out that don't really accurately portray maybe what a movie actually is. So
Right.
yeah, so okay,
And they
Sue's the
just
lead.
try. It's just engagement, right? It hits on
Yeah,
engagement, it hits on culture war,
yeah.
and just trying to get people riled up.
Yeah, they know what they're doing, right? But then you watch the film and say, okay, I see, I guess, why someone would talk about Sue Storm being a highlight, because in my opinion, she is. And I'll talk about Sue in a little bit. But I'm like, she's not the leader of the team. Reed is the leader, but they're a family, and they're just a family, they're equal parts important, right? So this was just a movie where Sue was not seen as an afterthought. Like, no disrespect to Jessica Alba, but I love Jessica Alba, obviously, but like we know why she was cast in that role, and like they didn't give her a lot to play with because they wanted to get the star power of Jessica Alba, and that was it. Like we know what a lot of those female roles, unless you were Famke Janssen, what they entailed when you were cast as a female superhero back then. You weren't given a lot of depth. And this is a Sue Storm that is given more depth than any Sue Storm probably ever put on screen, and that's how. And then someone depicts that as, oh, this is well, let's put it out there that she's the leader of the team. We know that's going to rile up the base, and then people go crazy, and you create nonsense conspiracy theorists and nonsense theories about what the movie is again before we even see it. Um, One thing I want to talk about is we talk about the opening of the movie. I'll be honest. I talked about it with our dad. I know he liked it a lot too. I don't think I disliked it. It was good. I, maybe it's just my hunger for more because I like the movie so much. This movie comes in under an hour, which I think a lot of folks will actually enjoy, and it plays well for a movie under an hour. But I did feel like I kind of maybe wanted to see one of those mini battles played out a little more. Um, I like that they have this established history that they're already out here beating up bad guys and have already had a lot of victories. But I think for a movie that I think for a while that first act there's not a lot of action. I thought it was paced a little slowly. I kept kind of waiting. So, all right, I'm enjoying this and I'm following everything along. I'm in the story, but I kind of want to see this action pick up a little bit. Part of me is like maybe I got kind of suckered in because Superman just like drops you right in the immediately into action. So maybe it's like coming from that movie and then coming to this was like a jarring thing to be like, wow, this is a lot of exposition and a lot of they're showing some scenes but very short action scenes to kind of show what's happening. I thought maybe you show some of those scenes and maybe play out one of the battles they had a little bit, and that probably only it takes you another 10 minutes or so. I don't think we're taking so much from the movie. I know some
They said they
are out
cut,
there.
the Red Ghost out of it, right? We saw John
Yeah,
Malkovich in the trailers, and they said they showed them fighting Red Ghost's monkeys, but super monkeys, but we didn't see Red Ghost, right? And so
right.
there's things that they may have cut. We know there's things they cut, but we don't. I don't know if that was from that sequence, but um, I'm sure they had ideas for stuff, but yeah, they decided to trim it for whatever reason.
Yeah, yeah. So I thought that I would have liked those things. I thought the movie could have used that, um, because and not because it was going poorly in any way. Again, I just thought the first act was a little slower than I think this movie needed to be. I think you needed and I think they thought they accomplished what they wanted by showing like those cutscenes and the dialogue from the Ted Gilbert show explaining about what they've done, which was again really cool. I liked it. I just thought maybe cut from that Gilbert thing, show one of the fight scenes, and then go back to it. But that was one small thing that I thought when I watched this film. What did you think in terms of one of the things we debated a bunch on this show was the decision to do a New Earth and to do a movie set in the '60s. I remember you were very much against that, all of it. You're like, setting this in the '60s, don't
Yeah,
want
it's
it.
the dumbest thing.
Doing this on another Earth, don't want it. Like you were completely against that. So now you've seen the movie and you see how definitely being on a different Earth and certainly the '60s aspect being a big element to the film. How do you think it worked in this movie?
Um, it worked a ton, right? And I gotta give them their credit. Um, is this a situation where, look, would this movie have been worse if it was in present day MCU? Uh, in many ways, probably, right? If I'm
I
just
think
being
it's.
honest,
I
right?
think it is. I think it is.
Yeah,
I'll
it
say yes.
probably is. Because it would have been MCUified, right? And people will say that and be like, what does that mean? And like, I don't know, you figure it out, right? But it just would have looked and felt more like, Brave New World and Thunderbolt's a good movie, right? But again, it's all in the MCU. And then Thunderbolts has that issue of like, yeah, where's everybody else, right? It's in New York, but like Fisk isn't mayor anymore, like, and is where's the none of the people that show up in Spider-Man is not around, like what's going on? And so that you don't have any of that baggage, right? If you make this movie and you put it in another universe and then you throw in the '60s element and you have that the retro aesthetic that is just done beautifully, like you know the decision to cast Max Shackman, which we all um, liked, we all thought that was a good decision, and obviously at the time there was word he was getting ready to make the next Star Trek movie, and that he had elements of that he was gonna take. And again, he understood the space element of this movie really well. And then obviously his work on WandaVision, dealing in different timelines and having the different
Right.
aesthetics of those timelines played out on screen. He was able to take that element as well. And so it's a perfect casting or a perfect choice for the director. But yeah, I mean, in terms of the setting, again, it's hard for me to say it wouldn't have been worse because um, like the setting is so uniquely important to what this movie is. And as much as I do agree the story is really well done and like the cast is really well done, first of all, you just couldn't do this story in the MCU, right? It had to be toned down to some degree. You just couldn't do Galactus.
Yeah.
Um, and beyond that, um, like the as much as those things are important to the movie, the it's also like the vibrance of the film, the the visuals, obviously really well done. Again, everything about the aesthetic. These characters feel old school, but still new. Like,
Hmm.
I mean, it's just things that you couldn't have done in a present day format. While they also then also kind of make sense if and when, and I don't know what, and we'll get to this, but I don't know what the plan is for these characters in terms of like figuring out timeline stuff and everything. But because this movie didn't end the way I think any of us really expected, this really didn't end the way I expected, and so
Yes, I
um,
agree.
those will be conversations they'll have, but these are characters that can transfer into present day, right? Like I don't think that this is like, and I don't think it'll be so much of a fish out of water like Captain America, right? Like
Yeah.
we get the Captain America jokes, and oh, where are the Brooklyn Dodgers and all that? Like we get those jokes, but when it comes to like Fantastic Four, like again, they're from another world, right? And their tech is so advanced that like it's not they're
Yeah.
not going to be like, oh man, what's a cell phone? Like maybe they didn't have cell phones, but like some of the stuff is going to be like it's going to be behind them in certain
Yeah.
aspects. Like
Yeah, I actually think that is and I don't know if that was something they thought about when they were crafting the story, but I think that that's going to be a strength that they're going to have. That they won't have to play the hits of the fish out of water. I was in the '60s, now I'm in 2028, and I don't know, what's going on. Like I thought that was a smart thing that they did, was to say, okay, yes, they're in the past, but it's a very futuristic past. Their technology is well advanced beyond some of the technology we have even today. So when you then put them in current time, you won't have, again, where's the Brooklyn Dodgers? I was at this game. Like those things don't play as much because Reed is aware of different timelines. He's aware of different realities. Like he's already solved a lot of these things already. So
yes,
so you kind of cut a lot of that teeth out, and it's going to make for when they arrive, and we know where their arrival is going to be because we saw it in Thunderbolts, aka New Avengers. It's going to make their arrival a lot more seamless, I think, when it comes to
we
that fish
think we
out of
saw
water
it.
aspect. Yeah, that's true. We think we saw it. We saw what we saw. And it was, again, how this movie ended, I agree, was not how I think any of us expected it to end. This movie centers a lot around Franklin Richards, which we knew Franklin was going to be a big part of this movie. Um,
Another decision I was not a fan of. Right, like
yeah,
even giving them a kid.
yeah, and I know you weren't a fan of it. I think there's a lot of question about, oh, now we got a baby. Like, what are you gonna do with a baby? And Franklin obviously is a super important character and a very powerful character that they put front and center as an important role in this film. Uh, I'll say, I mean, his birth is one of my favorite scenes in the history of the MCU. Uh, the fight, the scene of them pulling up on Galactus and them having to try to get out of there, but then being chased by Galactus' ship and the Silver Surfer. I was like, whoa, this movie it's hitting the gas to the pedal, and it is going full tilt. Like this is crazy, and it shows again Galactus how strong he is. He's like, you have a very important child. Give me the child now. And just induces a labor. That's crazy. I'm like, this is sick. This is crazy. And again, Sue having to try to fight while she's in labor is again just a crazy scene. I'm like, this scene is bonkers. This is just awesome stuff. And between the fight scene, the chase, the emotions of the birth, like I was almost emotional looking at this. I'm like, this is crazy. This is a lot happening, but not a lot where it's like, oh, this is too much. It's just like it speaks to like the heights, right? And to me, again, I think about like, oh, this is a legacy game for the Fantastic Four. It just shows you again that these are the greatest heroes ever, because like, yeah, Sue could literally fight the Silver Surfer while going in labor, and they could be chased by the Silver Surfer while in labor, and the Silver Surfer is is a game opponent, right? Someone that can literally chase them through hyperspeed, which we see, like like something when they thought, where we at? We just got half right, we were gone. They say, nope, she's in the hyperspeed force, like she's right here, like we've lost nothing. Like it was sick, and I was like, this scene is incredible. Again, one of my favorite acts I've seen in MCU in a while was that second act, and it brings up the birth of Franklin. It kind of centers the conflict, right? Like we think the conflict is simply, oh, he just wants to eat the earth, and they got to stop eating the earth. But then it goes beyond that because oh, actually, you have something that I would want more than Earth, which is this boy who can take my hunger of wanting to eat planets, and I can just rest and be done for the rest of my eternal life, so to speak, no pun intended. And obviously, they don't want to do that because they don't want to give up the child, of course. So that centers the argument around kind of how to fight Galactus while not giving up Franklin. Um, when you have the public who are like, well, why didn't you just give up the child? Like, everyone else is not going to die because you didn't give up one child, uh, which was very interesting. Like, it was expected that you have that reaction, but it was still kind of like dark. Like, man, it is a baby. Like, you guys, so you want them to give up their own baby because they're going to try to fight, right? You think they're going to do something else other than trying to give up their child, but centers really the rest of the movie, right? Everything is centered around what are other options? Do they have any other options? And then when they devise a plan to use Franklin as bait to then get Galactus to come to Earth, as opposed to have to go after him once a Silver Surfer blows up their plan to move the Earth. Which I love, by the way. That like I kept thinking, like, man, I hope this plan just like doesn't like. I was expecting it not to work. That was gonna annoy me. I was like, I don't like nerf Reed Richards. Like, as he says he could do this, I like want to think that he can do this. I like that Silver
Yeah.
Surfer just like came in and just blew up his stuff. And they were like,
Yeah.
damn it, like this was gonna work. And I'm like, man, that shows again, Reed Richards was actually gonna be able to literally move Earth to another solar system similar to our solar system because he's that badass. And the fact that Silver Surfer being the Silver Surfer, like, just went ham, just blew everything up. I like that that's how they moved. But again, Franklin's inclusion in this movie ends up being really the center point of this film. It's the center point of the Sue and Reed dynamic in a way that's very interesting. But we see kind of Reed's big brain, his inability to really kind of maybe be, in small instances, the father that builds the crib and does a little thing when he's thinking about other, he feels like are more important things, like figuring out the kid is going to have different abnormalities and what risks there are and making imaging things and like when the human familial aspects of maybe raising a child he's not quite ready for because his big brain is getting in the way of a lot of that. And then of course the very dramatic scenes, and I think again Vanessa Kirby did a phenomenal job when those scenes when it becomes oh, you're thinking about giving up Franklin, and he can't give an honest answer because he just doesn't have a poker face. And I thought Sue showing that anger with Reed in those moments and how she was like again like just the way like these other movies depicted Sue like just like this like wallflower with no emotion, and just like seeing Sue get after Reed in so many instances because again that's real. That is what you see in the comics. You see that they have
Yes.
problems at various times in the comics because of Reed's inability to show that humanity, um, and be able to get out of his own head in a lot of this stuff. I think seeing how much that hurts Sue and angers Sue at times, uh, I think there was always been a fear sometimes to show that side, and they showed it in many ways. And again, Sue was badass. What did you feel about the Franklin aspect? Because as you mentioned, that was one of the things you definitely thought was not a good idea.
Um. Yeah. I mean, look. I mean, again, it's a big part of the movie, right? I mean, that's a major point of the plot. Um. And it doesn't. I'm more curious. I'm more curious about it going forward than I am now, right? Like in this movie, it didn't have a big impact, right? It's the plot of the movie is about the kid, and that's fine, right? It's like the Incredibles, right? With Jack Jack, right? Does Jack Jack change the entire dynamics of the Incredibles? Like not necessarily, but what happens when you age up Jack Jack, right? And the Incredibles, a big conversation people have had is Incredibles 2, they didn't age up
Right.
anybody, right? And
Yeah.
we'll see what happens with the third movie they're making, but we already see in the post credit scene, like the next time we see Franklin Richards, he's gonna be a kid,
Yeah,
and
he's
he's gonna
eight
be, but
years.
he's gonna be older.
He's gonna be 8 years old, right? There's 8 years later, I believe it
Four,
was.
right?
Oh, it's 4 years. Okay, 4 years old.
Yeah, 4 years later. Yeah, so he'll be around 4 years old at
Yeah,
that
four
point.
years old. They're eight. That would be 8 years. They would have been a Fantastic Four, right?
Right. And so, like, they, you know, um, they're in a situation where, like, now that'll become something that we have to pay more attention to in terms of the dynamics changing and things of that nature. But the dynamics, you know, aren't that greater, aren't that much different with him as a kid, right? He didn't play much of a role. Him as a baby, rather, he didn't play much um, of a role other than uh, being there for the plot of the film, right? And so again, I think that was not as controversial. Again, one of the things that we had heard was, oh yeah, they're gonna have Franklin and Valeria, right? And it's gonna be a whole family and all that. And I'm like, oh, that's a lot, man. Like we haven't even gotten a Fantastic Four, and we're doing all this, and that's not necessarily what we've gotten yet, right? We may get there. I think we will by a sequel, but we may have both of them, and then maybe like you know like actual kids actors playing them, but didn't affect this movie, and that's it was. I can't. It's hard for me to say whether I was good or not. It was bad for the plot. I mean, again, I think the plot was good. So could they have done this movie without Franklin Richards? Sure, but it was fine for the plot and it made sense for what they were trying to do. I'm more concerned, is probably not the word, but I'm more intrigued to see how this goes forward. And again, we saw the post credit scene. I'm assuming that character is gonna play a big part of how things play out in Doomsday and Secret Wars as well, right? Um, and obviously his reality warping powers and everything. Like, who knows if that plays into how we kind of reset everything, so to speak. Who knows how this thing plays out?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I thought that again the Franklin aspect was going to be interesting for them to do. I thought they did it well. I think that Franklin being in some ways almost like a foil for Reed and Sue and their dynamic, I think was great to see. I think it added depth to both of those characters and depth to their relationship and us learning about their relationship, right? I think that obviously it gave Galactus reason to come to Earth and gave Galactus a true and by the way a really great kind of pull and link to the comics, right? Because in the comics, Franklin Richards inhibits the power of Galactus, and the fact that they went right to that immediately and just didn't even wait. Like I was like, oh great, cool, we're here. This is what we're doing now, and you get a feeling that this may not be the first time we deal with Galactus and Franklin Richards things in the future, and I look forward to those days. So I really liked this, and again, and I thought the centerpiece of that second act being his birth was super awesome. So I loved his inclusion in this. I really like that they're aging him up. I think that was I didn't know what they were going to do, but he's now a child, and he could talk and he's walking and all that stuff. Like I was like, okay, cool, yeah, we're advancing this thing because I think that my thing when we were hearing about Franklin being born and to being pregnant, I'm like, all right, how long are the Fantastic Four? How long are we going to have these actors as the Fantastic Four? Like, are we gonna have to wait 15 years before Franklin Richards is able to do anything? Like, what's going on? Um, so I think that was a smart decision to age him up by the end of the movie, and I think that his inclusion in this was good. And again, it just added so much. Even we know Johnny Storm again. We've seen him risk his life and literally die on the missions in the comics. Him like being like, hey, tell Franklin his uncle Johnny loves him, and him willing to sacrifice himself to stop Galactus. Like all these little things, added moments that we might not have been as strong had he not been born, had he
Look,
not
man,
been in the movie.
Johnny Storm, man. You talk about a guy who, every chance he got was the first guy ready to get into every single scrap with Galactus, with Silver Surfer. Before they could even devise a plan, he was ready to, put his head down and, run through the middle of the hole to try and get a first down. But no, he was, again, they did an excellent job writing that character.
They did an excellent job, no question. What did you think of Galactus, and even more on the Silver Surfer in terms of how they handled both of those characters as the villains of this movie?
Um, I think they did an excellent job creating the presence and the threat of Galactus. I think that which I think is the most important part of Galactus is, you know, like what Galactus represents, in terms of the threat and this guy being a planet eater, and like creating that tension and that drama over the course of, like you said, that second act where they're like, look, man, he's coming. We've seen this guy. He's real. He's bigger than anything we've ever seen. And like, there's no stopping him, right? The only thing we can do is hope to run away, hope to outlast him, because there's no beating him. And that was really good writing. Kind of reminded me of Dormammu a little bit in Doctor Strange. I think they did this a little bit better, just visually, and like, the Dormammu scene in Doctor Strange is really good.
Yeah.
It has some obviously had the comedic elements to it, but like, but I think this was a far more pointed, far grander, introduction to the Galactus character. And Silver Surfer as the Herald, I mean, they did, she did what Silver Surfer normally does, right? I mean, she played the role well. Again, typical arc for the Silver Surfer character. I liked that scene at the end with where Johnny kind of unveils what he's been working on and what he found on her, because I didn't know where that was going, right? I could barely even understand what she was saying half the time. So I'm like, what did she saying that thing meant? Like, but so I didn't know where, and I didn't know what she was saying to him, obviously, and in the record, I thought the recordings were her. I thought that she was sending out signals to Earth, like, "Oh, I'm coming," blah blah blah.
Right, yeah.
And that they just happened to intercept random alien transcripts,
Right.
across the galaxy, and they just listen to them, not knowing what they mean. But that was a fascinating twist, and again, showing her flashback and everything like that was a good character moment. Is this a character? I guess the question I would have about Silver Surfer is, again, is this a character that we need to see an expanded version of, right? Or do they say this is good and we're gonna get Norrin Rad now? Like, I'm a little worried. I'm worried, maybe not the word, but like, I don't know. Some people are gonna probably it'd be a little controversial, but I don't know how much more Silver Surfer I need right now. There's way more stuff you could do, and maybe they give you Norrin Rad, but they say we're not going to connect it to Fantastic Four. It'll just be like a separate thing. That may make sense, but like, I don't know if does this now then cause Galactus to then go after Norrin Rad, and that's how we get his introduction, and like we're gonna go through the Galactus Norrin Rad thing all over again. Like, that's possible, but like, do we really need to see that again, or do you skip that part? Right? They skipped it in this movie. Like, we barely saw how she got the role. So that would be my question, right? It's like, is this kind of it because this is somebody Silver Surfer when we heard that this was going to be a character they did, not knowing how they were going to do the character. We assumed like, oh, this will be they'll introduce Silver Surfer in this, and then we'll get a special presentation movie or a Disney Plus series or a spin-off movie or whatever situation. And come out of it, this version, like, it's fine, but I don't know if I need anything else. And then the Galactus thing, the only thing I will say is, again, while I think the threat of Galactus was awesome, and the visuals were great, I don't know if the way it ended worked for me as well.
Interesting.
It wasn't terrible. But and it's hard to say, right? All these comics, like, these characters all have incredible feats of strength. They've done insane things. We can go and list things Galactus has done and be like, there's no way he would ever lose to the Fantastic Four like that. And we can list things Sue Storm's ever done and be like, it's totally plausible that she could do what she did to Galactus in this manner. But I don't know if it just worked. I don't know if it worked in the sense of the movie. Now, to be fair, it took her out until Franklin Richards, came in the mix. But it felt like they kind of nerfed Galactus a little bit.
Yeah,
But to be fair, they didn't kill off Galactus, right? They just did enough to
it
push him
was
through a
literally
through a
he was
portal,
literally just moving him through a portal. Yeah, I'll disagree with
right?
that.
And with the help of Silver Surfer, right?
Right, yeah. So it's Surfer, yeah, they still almost didn't do it until Silver Surfer came in. Yeah, I'll be honest. I was totally fine with how that those scenes end. I think that one thing I like with this movie is I feel like even for decisions that may seem controversial, may seem like it's a bold move to do that. I feel like they set up everything. So like when it came to stuff with the messages that they were reading, and then they realized it was these cries of people who were losing their homes and losing their planets and stuff. It goes back to a scene of Silver Surfer with walking with her daughter, before she becomes the herald of as the Silver Surfer, right? Um, that's Charlotte Ball walking on a planet. Like that parallels with what Johnny is talking about with her, and how that parallels with Sue, and Sue willing to do whatever it takes to fight for her son, and then that parallel gets drawn in a way that makes sense. I think also just in terms of the message Sue gives to the people, the people are at this fever pitch, and when she gives that speech to the people, when she's like, I'm not going to sacrifice my son, for this planet, but I'm not going to sacrifice this planet for my son. Like, it sounds like kind of like a funny line. It's not maybe a little cheesy, but like that line leads right into how the movie ends, which is her like literally saying, "I'm gonna put it all on the line to save this planet. Like if that means I die, that's fine, but I'm putting it all on the line. Like this is not gonna be I'm gonna do whatever and pull any punches." And I think for Sue, one, like the fact that Reed was fully aware, like because again he's probably tested all their powers 100 billion times in a row, and like she probably told her, "Hey, this is where you can go as far as how far you can go with your powers before you put yourself in a very serious situation." He knew immediately this is where you can't go. You're going too far. But like, Sue is extremely strong in this movie, and this is who she is. She's not overpowered. Like Sue Storm can do incredible things. It's always a thing of like how much is she willing to output, and how much is she putting her body at risk. She could square up with like the Phoenix Force. Like that, like Sue Storm is extremely strong. So she's up against Galactus. The world's on the line. She's about to take her son, and she literally the whole movie she's like, I'm willing to lay it on the line for my kid and for my city. Like she's like hardcore like that. So the fact she's like, all right, I will literally push you in there myself, and even if that means I die, but I'm not letting you take my planet or my kid. Like I thought it was powerful. I thought it was badass. Like I was like, yeah, you know what, I'm totally fine with that. And Galactus kind of underestimating what he was really dealing with. I really did enjoy. Again, this was not her knocking him out. It was not her killing him. This was her, again, you think about just pushing him, 2-3 blocks. That's really all she did. But even and like the effort it took killed her literally. But that was she was willing to do. A, she was powerful to do that, and B, that she was willing to do that for the sake of saving her planet when she was the main one who said, "I'm not going to give up my kid for this." I thought it lined up extremely well with how the story that was being told. So I really, last final act was good. Again, I think the second act was the best, but I really liked the final act. I was like, yeah, I like this. I like how this ended. Um, and Franklin being able to resurrect her, that being the avenue to explore his reality altering powers was, I think, made sense too. And I like that it was subtle, right? We didn't see like some crazy mystical thing happen. It was kind of small, but he's able to, in that small instance, do enough to bring her back. I really liked it, so I didn't have much of an issue with how the movie ended and how Sue became kind of the
I also the other thing that was weird was that I wasn't buying that they thought that the plan of switching out the baby carriages was going to work.
that was a bad play.
Like,
Yeah, that was a bad play.
like that was one of those where I was watching it. Usually, you watch these movies and like they'll like the heroes will put together a great plan, right? And it somehow doesn't work because the villain's just like
Yeah.
on top of it, and you're like, damn, I can't believe that didn't work. Like that checked every box. Like that's one where I was like, I don't know, man. Like I could have told you that
I'll
wasn't
be
work.
honest. Like I agree it was a bad plan, but maybe this is where I kind of contradict myself a bit. But it's almost like I don't know, some 1960s people. I feel like this is the kind of cockamamie plan they would come up with, think that it's gonna work.
Right.
Like it almost fit in a weird way, as much as like it was not a good plan. And I was like, you really think that Galactus is gonna be distracted and then not realize it's not a hidden
Yeah,
there
like there's
because
like on some ways, like yeah, I mean, I'm sure that's worked on some of the goofy villains they fought before, and
yeah, right.
that kind of thought process probably has worked, and you
I
know,
mean, again, these are folks that
but
thought they
like
were just gonna be able to pull up on Galactus and punch him. Like so, again,
right, exactly,
there is a level of even though they've now seen what he's doing with it, they do work with a level of arrogance that I almost didn't mind it, even though I acknowledge, yes, it was a dumb plan. There was no way that plan was going to work. My
right,
fiance, when we watched it, she thought like she had that was an issue, and also she was like, "Why would you then send them to your home? Like, why would you don't have a better place to hide
yeah.
them?"
Why would you like hold them?
Well,
Yeah,
I defended that part because I was like, listen, like it's the Baxter Building. There's probably no place that's more secure in on the planet
right. They
than the
had the
Baxter.
robot with them, like
Yeah, than the Baxter Building. Like they have lockdown protocols. Like it's they're the strongest people on the planet. So I mean, unless you're sending them to a White House bunker, I don't know where else you're going to send them. So I didn't have as much issue with that aspect, sending them to the Baxter Building and knowing that it was a risk. And I like that, like even though they put their protocols in, like Galactus just grabs, ripped the building and grabs the kid. Like, oh yeah, your building protocols aren't going to stop you from grabbing this kid. Now, any other normal villain, you probably can't get in that building with what they would have had. So
right.
those things didn't bother me quite as much. I get what you're saying, but I thought I didn't that didn't bother me. Neither of those things bothered me as much. But I see what you're saying in terms of the plan they had. It was not a good one. I definitely agree with that.
Yeah, no,
I did like.
the,
I did
I
think
did
that.
like.
I did think it was a smart plan though to say, "Oh, we just got we now. Okay, if we can't move the planet, then we got to bring him here and then move him away." I did
No, that was
I did
smart, right?
that. I did like a lot.
What they were setting up made sense. Yeah, what
Yeah,
they were setting up made sense. I liked
they should have
one
realized. But
character
they
that
should have
was
realized what we
awesome.
all realized that they were going to have to box him to some degree in order to get him in there, which they didn't think they had to do.
Right, 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 exactly. Um, I, one character that was really well done was Mole Man, right?
Oh, Mole Man was one of the highlights of
You
this
know,
film to me.
their utilization of Mole Man was perfect. Again, talking about creating that world um, that they've been operating in and using a character that we've all thought like, I mean, could it be done? Like, could you do a Mole Man movie? Like, maybe, but I don't know. Like, that's more of a Saturday morning cartoon villain than he is like a
Yeah,
superhero, big budget superhero movie villain. And to be able to utilize him in the way they did and create the lore that they've done, I mean, that's one thing Matt Shackman knows how to do, man, is again create like a world and create lore around that. And um, you know, then tying that into the end part with all the people of New York going to Subterranea
yeah.
and tying that in with what they had worked with the Future Foundation and um, you know, recalls of Mobile Man, like the whole thing was funny, man. Like the way they played again all their world and creating that world that they operated in was so well done, and it kind of speaks to part of maybe why they didn't go through with ending that world, right? Because we all thought, like, you know, leading into this movie for years that, you know, when we saw Galactus was the villain and they're in a different alternate universe, we were like, well,
And
it
Secret
makes
Wars
sense.
come
Like,
in.
yeah, they're
Yeah,
gonna, yeah, Secret Wars coming. Like, yeah, they'll just, you know, the Galactus will eat their planet and they'll have to jump off world. And they kept saying throughout the movie, we're not leaving, right? And I'm like, sure you are.
yeah,
Uh, that's what they all say, right?
right.
But they weren't lying, right? I mean, they didn't leave. They didn't jump ship while Galactus was getting ready to win. They didn't pull a Yoda and go to Dagobah. Like they stood there and fought, and they got rid of Galactus. And I don't know what that means, right? Because we all
Yeah,
thought, you know, again that this world was going to be over, and then they would jump into a different reality, a different multiverse, go and jump into the multiverse somehow. Reed would figure that out, and that they would jump into the 616 like we got in the after credit scene of Thunderbolts, right? We thought
yeah.
that was probably the tie-in. You know, I mean,
And
fast
now,
forward, you see the post credit scene of this, and they're still on their planet.
yeah, and I'll be honest, I really, I'm fine with that. Given the thing they've laid out, I'm fine with that because I feel like, um, again, the world they created was really great, and it makes me now have attachment to this world. So the idea that now this world is eventually going to end, most likely, or if it ends, then maybe there's some kind of combining of it, whatever. Like it's gonna have stakes now when this happens. What I like that they defeated Galactus. Like now, this is another notch on their belt. So when they're trying to tell Thor to do something or somebody to do something, like it's actually gonna be like, well, listen, you better listen to Reed Richards. Like he's him. You know what I'm saying? Like they were like some rookies that like couldn't beat Galactus, and then they're coming to 616 trying to boss around Captain Marvel and Thor. That might have seemed a little weird. It won't seem weird now. Now that we know what these people are about, we know what their resume is. This is now again not some rookie team or not some team that lost to Galactus and had to tuck their tails and flee their Earth. These are people that saw Galactus come to their Earth and they got him out of here. So I actually end up liking what they set up. It's not what I expected at all, especially because now we're walking into a Avengers Doomsday movie and it still really doesn't feel like we have anything established, which I will have some Hero Talk episodes to really deal with a lot of the things happening with that film. More stuff happening this weekend where in San Diego Comic Con this weekend. Rebecca Ronjaman, who's going to be Mystique in the movie, saying that the script's still not done. Romaine, sorry, that saying the script's not done. It's like, ooh, okay. Feige said that no movies get created that don't have finished scripts. So we'll see what the deal is with that. Let's get to this after credit scene or the post credit scene or mid credit scene, I guess technically. So again, we fast forward 4 more years. Did not expect that. You fast forward 4 more years.
That was the first shock. I was like, wow, damn, 4 years later.
Like, wow. So they've now 4 more years later. And you have Sue sitting there reading to young Franklin. And Franklin wants another book, and she looked for the books to read, and she sees reading him like Darwinism. He's like, okay, we're not going to read this. What the hell? I'll give you an actual fun kids book. And all of a sudden, like, she sees darkness kind of come over, being seem weird, and then she looks back, and there he is, playing with her kid, Dr. Doom. Dr. Doom himself is sitting right there. And that's where the scene ends. That's essentially where the movie ends. So I guess I think we've all taken wagers. I think we all kind of thought that Dr. Doom was going to show up in some form or fashion in this film, whether it be
in the post credit scene.
Yeah, I think we all thought pretty much a mid post credit scene. So there he is. We don't see his face. We don't see his face.
That was one thing that we kind of were like, are we actually going to see him or are they going to tease him, right? I think that's more of a tease.
Yeah, we don't see his face. We do see his mask because he's holding his mask in his hand.
Which is crazy.
Yeah, and he's
that
like,
was crazy.
He's like, caressing Franklin, and you're like, what the hell is going on? And I was like, I wanted that scene to be extended. I wanted to see like dialogue. I was like, oh, are you really gonna cut it right there? I was like, oh, I thought this was gonna be, kind of like what we saw with, at the end of like, Captain America, First Avenger. We kind of have a little bit of an extended scene kind of happen. But that was it. That's all you got.
Which is kind of like what we got with the Thunderbolts, right? The Thunderbolts, it was one setting, but it was, I think, the longest post credit scene maybe ever.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that was a scene. That was a real scene. And again, we've had different mid post credit scenes that have felt like that, where they've been more like scenes. I thought this is what we were getting, and I was about to go. I'm like, yo, this is gonna be. I was on the edge of my seat, like, yo, this is gonna be crazy. And it just cut. I was like, but like.
So many questions.
This leads to so many questions, right? Okay, so number one, earlier in the movie, when Sue Storm is addressing the world, I guess not the United Nations, I guess are equivalent to that.
Yeah, the Future Foundation.
The future. As a representative of the Future Foundation, you see all the countries there. Liberia is listed with a representative chair, but no one is sitting in it. So you're like, okay, Liberia is in this world. And they're not messing with the Future Foundation. They're not showing up to this UN meeting or whatever this thing is. That's interesting. And they just left that there. That was it. There was no other reference to it, but you took note of that. And then you get to this scene 4 years later from the events of this movie, and that's where Dr.
I think they were one of the countries that was in that thing when they were going over the different countries that were
They're checking in for the
trying to
move the planet.
checking in for the thing for the Galactus.
Was Latveria in there? I didn't remember that.
I think that's where I saw Latveria. So what's funny is because I had missed, I like may have vaguely saw the UN thing, but I saw Latveria pop up. I think then, like they were showing these different countries pop up, and I told Henry because Henry, we were sitting there in the theater after the fact, and Henry
Henry, our brother, yeah.
Well, Henry, our brother Henry, and I guess I'll lead into what one of my takes. But I was like, so I'm thinking maybe Doom's in their world. And Henry's like, well, yeah, we saw Latveria earlier. And I was like, did we? And I was like, oh yeah. In my head, I'm thinking Latvia, right? Like they're showing all these countries, and so I'm thinking Latvia, like Kristaps Porzingis,
right.
And and so I'm just like, oh yeah, London, blah blah blah, Latvia, and it didn't even hit me Latveria as I'm watching it until that post-credit scene and Henry mentioning that, being like, oh yeah, you're right, that was Latveria. I'm tripping. And so but yeah, like you said, we did see Latveria pop up. That led me to believe, even the post-credit scene in general led me to believe that.
Yes, I
think the world that we were watching.
Yes, I believe that Doctor Doom is from that world, which is another thing that you think awesome. Another thing that I don't think anybody expected. I don't know, but
I think we speculated that there was a decent shot just because it's like, look, it's the Fantastic Four. Where else is he going to come from? He can't be from the actual MCU 616. But so I think there was a decent shot, but I think there was skepticism about
when you start with Galactus and Silver
concept.
Surfer, and
right.
we start and the fact that there's not this long-standing.
There's a lot of reasons it wouldn't make sense.
Right, they don't seem to be an illustration to some long-standing rivalry between Reed Richards and Victor Von Doom that begins with them in college or even as children. Like none of those things are being established in this film. So you think, all right, I was thinking, all right, well, maybe he's from an entirely different world. That's not even the Fantastic Four's world. Why wouldn't he just be the first villain to then lead you into Doomsday? So he's in this world, which is great. I agree.
Yes. I would have told you it was a bad idea, right, before, but now I think it's awesome.
Well, yeah, in the world we've established is like, no, actually, I like this. And the glitch we have in the costume is essentially just a Doctor Doom costume. This is not a when we saw that we saw that birthday invitation who they made
Downey
with the suit
with a curly top,
the curly top, and we were trying to say, I guess this is gonna be it. I guess we got to live with this. Like this guy was just in the full cloak, hood over his head, regular old Doom mask. This, I mean, I don't know what to make of where this now sends the story, because again, we see the Fantastic Four ship, coming in New Avengers, like a bat out of hell. I'm thinking again, they're fleeing Galactus, or they're fleeing a world that's ended. The next movie we have is Doomsday. Like we don't have anything. We have nothing else.
Yeah.
Spider-Man. Yeah, Spider-Man before Doomsday. All right, Spider-Man's first, and then because they moved back.
It was after, but
yeah. So, but I don't think that anything's going to be really established in Spider-Man for Doomsday. Doesn't sound like Kevin Feige wants to illustrate that
there will be something, but I don't think anything that. I don't think anything's gonna have to do with the Fantastic Four. I don't think.
Yeah, and those thoughts that maybe
I can't imagine you gotta explain it.
Yeah, I think this idea that it's gonna be a Battle World movie, I think that's probably unlikely at this point. So I look at this now, man. Like this is gonna be basically. I think this scene that you're seeing is gonna probably be the first scenes of Avengers Doomsday, and we're gonna be that movie now becomes like a crazy thing, right? Like, why the Fantastic Four from this first interaction with Doom? We know how strong Sue Storm is, so she can move Galactus. Can she not 1v1 Doctor Doom? Like what? So what is gonna happen? It leads to a lot of questions.
So EJ, before I elaborate more on this post credit scene, I have to ask you, because you made a controversial statement on our last podcast. Mm-hmm. We were talking Superman. You said Marvel's in trouble.
Yeah.
right? You say Kevin Feige is in trouble, and we'll talk about Feige next week. He had some comments that continued that the thought that maybe he's feeling some pressure
Yeah.
from Warner Brothers. Um, I hesitated to go that far because I wanted to see this movie. I know they had Doomsday coming down the pipe, so I was like, well, we got to see before they get to. Like we talked about the whole Supergirl thing, and we got Doomsday coming up. We'll see, how that plays out. But I mean, this movie being as good as it was is going to help Doomsday so much more than even Thunder. Like Thunderbolts was good, and it's going to help Doomsday. But like, I think I don't think Thunderbolts is still. I still don't think they were a draw, right? To go to get people to go see
Right.
Doomsday. But this movie plus that post credit scene, and now it's like, I mean, if you saw this movie, you have to see Doomsday, right? I
Yeah.
mean, do we still think Marvel is like, are they in trouble, or are we going to give them until Doomsday before we can fully bury
I
them?
mean, listen. I still think Marvel is in trouble, even though I really like this movie, simply because there's a freight train coming, and a universe that's being created that just seems extremely more compelling and interesting than the universe that Marvel has created, that is
Right.
established already. Now they're gonna have the opportunity to reboot, so they'll have their chance to then establish something. Like James Gunn just walked into a room at San Diego Comic Con and got a standing ovation. I don't think it's ever
Yeah.
been. I don't think it's ever been done before. I don't think Kevin Feige's walked into a room at Comic Con and got a standing ovation before he said anything. Like that's.
Yeah.
I don't think. I don't know if that's ever happened. It shows you,
Yeah.
like, whatever the Rotten Tomatoes score will say. It shows you where the people are. James Gunn has got the juice. I think there's zero doubt about that. Even after this movie, which I think is very good and a lot of people really like. Some people I think are gonna like way more than I do. Even, I think a lot of people think this is one of the greatest MCU movies. Like, still, that guy has the juice. Fantastic Four just came out, and that guy's getting a standing ovation at Comic Con. So yes, they
Yeah.
are in trouble. It doesn't mean they can't work themselves out of trouble, but at the end of the
Yeah.
day, they're going to they're building themselves up back to an Infinity War Endgame type atmosphere, which will be phenomenal. But remember, what the issue with Marvel wasn't that they couldn't deliver on the Infinity Endgame model. The problem was
Events.
they couldn't
Yeah.
follow up what the world's going to look like once those events happen. So that's why I say they're in
Right.
trouble, because even if they knock Doomsday and Secret Wars out of the park, and we're super excited or whatever for this new world. Well, if this new world, it has some stupid concept on how they do the X-Men and how they reboot, Steve Rogers and Tony Stark, which was all but confirmed by Kevin Feige a couple weeks ago, then you're still dead on arrival, because you got to be able to
I
follow up whatever your
yeah.
crescendo is. And the DC
I
world's not even
will.
close to coming to that moment yet. They're in their infancy and they've already got the juice. That's why I say they're still in trouble.
I will. One thing I'll say again before I jump back into the post credit scene is I will say that my confidence for their ability to do the X-Men justice went up exponentially after seeing this movie. Right, because I've been somebody that, I mean, obviously for years we were like, thank God Disney's got the rights to the X-Men again, and Marvel's got the rights to the X-Men because they're the only ones that can do them at this point, and it's going to be good, and blah, blah, blah. But then the last few years, I think pretty much since Quantumania, I was like, man, are we sure? Are we sure we want Marvel to do this X-Men movie? Are we sure that they're the ones that are going to make a good X-Men movie?
Yeah.
Because I haven't been sure about that for years. Now it was a controversial statement when I said it, right? Like that was something that was like not easy to admit, because again, it's been years that we were like, no doubt it was going to be great. I'm now back to that point where I'm like, I'd be shocked if that movie wasn't really, really, really good. Like, of course, the threshold between like good, very good movie, good to very good movie, and like incredible movie is a lot of that is subjectivity, right?
Right.
But I'd be surprised if people are like, yeah, I didn't like it, right? On like a really grand scale, and it winds up being a 75% Rotten Tomatoes movie or something like that. Like, I'll be very surprised if that happens, but that's years down the line. What I'll say though about the Doomsday thing, and Doom being from this world makes sense. I think that they're going to have. I think whatever we thought of the Doctor Doom, Fantastic Four, Reed Richards relationship, all those different things, I think it's going to be as traditional or almost as traditional as we know it to be. Like, I
Mm.
don't think they're going to change much. I think they glossed over it entirely in this movie for a multitude of reasons. Um, I don't think it's for story reasons. I'll be honest. I think it's for studio reasons. They were like, we're not doing Doctor Doom. One, I don't think they had a plan to do Doctor Doom, and contrary to what Kevin Feige,
Mm.
you know, has said. Like, you know, I know he's saying one thing, but I don't think that. I think when this movie was, you know, conceived, the concept of this movie was put together. Like, you know, I think obviously they were saving Doctor Doom, right? Like, I think I agree that, yeah, I'm sure they had plans for Doctor Doom at some point, but I don't think like you know, I don't think that they were planning on like going down that path so soon. But two, when they did decide to go down that path, and it was the Russos doing it, like I don't think that they wanted Shackman to touch anything involving Doctor Doom, right? I
Mm.
think they wanted that to be the Russos and Robert Downey Jr. and Kevin Feige and those three collectively working that out, right? So if you have anything involving Doctor Doom, and then you know, three, the movie didn't need anything involving Doctor Doom, right? Like Jackman probably didn't really want much. I'm sure he would have been like, sure, I'll do Doctor Doom, but like that movie,
Yeah.
the script he gave them had nothing to do with Doctor Doom in it, right? And sure, he could have thrown in a bunch of Easter eggs and whatnot, and they did to some degree, but like they didn't like reference Victor constantly and all that because it wasn't about the movie wasn't about him. But all that being said, I think that what we understand the Doctor Doom Reed relationship to be and the Doom Fantastic Four relationship, I think is what we're gonna get. I
I
think they'll
agree.
have known each other, and I think when we see them, like I think that's why he's playing with the kid. Is my guess. It's like, oh yeah, you know, Uncle Victor's here, you know,
Yeah.
and it's like
Yeah.
I think Sue's
It's up
gonna be like,
nephew.
oh damn,
Yeah, because
yeah,
this is like
yeah, exactly,
you see how protective Sue is and was of Franklin in the first movie. Again, she literally moved Galactus and killed herself in order to try to save her planet and her son. She sees a hooded man with a metal mask touching her kid, and it's not an immediate. I gotta like box this guy right now. It's kind of like a
yeah,
what are you
yeah.
doing
She didn't even
here?
get off my kid.
Right. It was like a what are you doing here kind of vibe, and it was different than what I would have expected. Again, I expected something, and I wanted to see that dialogue play out. But given who Sue had been at that point, that's not the reaction you would think if someone who you have no idea who they are and you have no idea what they bring to the table or your dynamic with them is playing a game with your kid that you literally said you
And,
died for, you did die for. That says, okay, there's some history here that we're going to have to explore. But the question,
right.
though, Kendall, is will they have enough time to really explore that? I mean, the Doomsday, like, remember, we're going to get the X-Men Doomsday movie. We're going to be dealing with Magneto and Professor X and Cyclops. Like, there's a lot going on, as we know, which is why maybe we still don't have a finished script. Like, can they land this plane in an effective way? I think is a fair question because they're really leaving it all up to Avengers Doomsday to figure all those questions out.
Yeah, I mean that's not going to be easy. And again, that goes back to like maybe this movie just should have been longer, right? And maybe you should have thrown like 5 minutes of Doomsday in this movie, but
Right.
you know they weren't going to do that, right? They got to save like what is down the Downey costume reveal and all that. All that's got to be saved for the movie and the trailers, right? You know,
Yeah.
the trailers now have become a marketing, you know, ploy and a money maker, a revenue generator for them, even beyond like the actual movie. So like, yeah, um, they're not going to reveal that stuff in Fantastic Four, um, but yeah, they have a tall order, but the movie, my guess is Doomsday is a movie about again these three worlds that we all are at this point very attached to, right? Because that was the hard
Yeah.
part for the Fantastic Four. Like we weren't attached to any of the Fantastic Four universes. Like they could have brought back the old ones. Obviously, that would have been a bad business move. But like, and they brought back Johnny Storm, and that was cool. Chris Evans and Deadpool, but like they've created a Fantastic Four in one movie that we are attached to. That's an entirely different world. We have a Fox X-Men universe that we are still very much attached to as fans, and you know Monica Rambeau's over there with you know Beast and the rest of the X-Men, and then we've got obviously the MCU 616, and so it's going to be a convergence of those three. And I'm assuming Doctor Doom is at the head of the snake in terms of being the antagonist. The question is why, right? Like I'm assuming they need Franklin. He needs Franklin.
Mm,
I'm sure he's trying to fix something. Is my guess,
mm.
and he probably steals Franklin on some level, right? That's my guess is that either he's the one in the ship with Franklin,
Oh,
or the Fantastic Four are in the ship going to wherever he's at to go
mm.
find him, right?
Wow.
That would be my guess. Um, but man, I mean the anticipation for what that scene is in like what
Whew.
that scene how that scene's gonna play out. What
Yeah.
I love about this post credit scene and both this and the Thunderbolts, they say both obviously were shot by the Russos, and you could see like it looks so different
Oh
than the
yeah.
rest of the movie.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's so
Like
that scene is shot
it's
so gray. I'm like, wow, the color in the scene is
it's
so
so
different.
gray,
Yeah.
and I'm like, oh boy, yeah, like this movie looks so different than like, and so, that's what's so great about their Avengers movies and even the OG Avenger movies is the Whedon movies is that like you see these characters that in their own worlds like these all their movies are very different and
Yeah.
whatnot, and then you put them all in the same movie and it's like boy like this is like kind of jarring, right? So to see the Fantastic Four to watch their own movie and see them in their own setting in such a unique way, and then the post credit scene immediately, and it's like, yeah, now you're in a different world. It's
Yeah.
the same world, but it's
Yeah.
a completely different movie,
Yeah.
completely different tone, setting, and Doctor Doom is showing up. I mean, again, you know, they're saying. I mean, they said Robert Downey Jr. was in the costume. I'm like, that doesn't really mean anything because we didn't see him. But,
Yeah.
um, but man, I can't wait. Yeah, again, he's like you said, he has his mask, right?
Yeah.
How much he wears it. I mean, he's already not wearing it in that scene, right? So, it's created that a normal thing there, that a precedent that he doesn't wear it all the time. But boy, yeah, like you said, the excitement to see Doom and see how he connects, um, man, again, there's just obviously a ton of history there, and
Yep.
um, that's a villain that I hope does the job. And I will say, last thing is that Robert Downey Jr. This is another thing that I think I'm gonna wind up eating crow on. All right, I'm just gonna be
Really?
honest. I think I'm gonna wind up eating crow on the Downey.
I'm not sure about that yet.
Because he's a great actor.
I know.
Right? He's a great actor. The Russos know they know what they're doing, man. We can already see with these post credit scenes. Like, you guys know what they're doing.
Yeah.
They've got a great actor now. Again, they have a messy concept of a film, right? So they're gonna have to figure that out. But they already like the fact that they've done this where it seems like that Doom is he's connected to the Fantastic Four. He's not an Iron Man villain or anything like that.
Yeah.
Like, they're already starting off like, yeah, they know Doctor Doom, right? We've already figured Kevin Feige knows the Fantastic Four, right? We figured that out. Like, he knows how to do them and do them justice.
Yeah.
Like, there's no way they're gonna not know how to do Doctor Doom, and part of that is knowing that yes, Doctor Doom is deeply tied to the Fantastic Four.
Yeah.
And now again, making him Iron Man, like, that's something that it is what it is. But one of the things that is interesting, obviously, about Downey's biography is, and shout out to, whatchamacallit, McMahon, that just passed away. Julian McMahon had just passed away.
Mm-hmm.
Played Doctor Doom in the original Fantastic Four, but Robert Downey Jr. was second in that running to play Doctor Doom.
Right.
If it wasn't going to be Julian McMahon, it was going to be Robert Downey Jr. So it's a character that he almost didn't. He almost played that character probably instead of Iron Man, and like, they know that there's a fit there naturally to begin with, right? And so to see him now play that role and see him playing off of a much better group of Fantastic Four characters than the ones that we had in that movie, like, I think this is gonna work, right? I'm still have my concerns and my problems about, like, long term what this is gonna do to the Doom character and all of that, but in the short term, yeah, this is gonna work.
Yeah, I just, again, I love that he's from this world. I love that it feels like they are going to establish this connection with the Fantastic Four as being his original ops. Again, there's a lot of concern about, is this guy just like the Iron Man of his world, or their Iron Man connection? And look, maybe there's going to be some kind of Iron Man thing by the time we get to Infinity War or whatever, but the fact that I feel like there is going to be a strong tie to the Fantastic Four when we think about the origins of this Victor Von Doom. I think it's super important, and I'm really excited about it.
The big question I have is if he's from that world, where was he? What was he doing? Why
My
wasn't he involved in the
my theory
Galactus?
is that he was in the midst of taking over Latveria, which is why Latveria had no representation of at the Future Foundation meetings.
So you don't think he's been established yet?
I think. I mean, it's 4 years later. By 4 years, maybe he is. I'm just saying. I don't. I think that
Right,
that
right.
time.
Yeah, I'm saying like during that movie.
I think in that movie, he is dealing with trying to take over Latveria. That is his thing. He's not worried about New York or anything. Like he's probably in the midst of a takeover. Like I think that's how I think is. I mean, I'm not saying I could be wrong, but that was like I was like, okay,
Yeah.
I pictured in my brain what's happening. Right, they don't got no representation because they probably are worlds or a country kind of under siege as Doom is trying to, take over, or maybe he's just beginning his coup to take over. And 4 years later, now he is the emperor, right? Like now he is the guy, and maybe he's someone that they've already had to deal with in major ways because he's now gained power. That was my theory as to why he wasn't present at all in this movie. Was that he was taking care of business in an important way in this.
Now I wonder if it was about the multiverse, and like maybe he was just like, you guys are concerned about our planet. I was concerned about our multiverse, and that was, But like you said, when you're doing the 4 years later, they may not even ever touch.
He's not going to reference. I think something happened 4 years ago. I don't think so, but we'll see. So that was how I played it. I was like, oh, he was getting busy. That's why he was. And he also is. Victor Von Doom is also a genius. Like he also could have. He has like almost equal intellect to Reed Richards. He also could have played it out. Like, oh yeah, no, they're gonna win. Like he could be like, I knew y'all were going to be Galactus. I didn't have to get out of bed. And they're probably thinking, well, a hole, like he could have helped us or whatever, But he's like, y'all were gonna win. I didn't. Like he's doomed. He knows all things. So like that to me also, if you really wanted to piece together why he didn't have any say in the fact that the Earth was gonna be eaten,
you could have said like, oh, he knew like either you guys they were gonna he was gonna take your kid or. Or you guys were going to beat him, but there was no other outcome.
Yeah. The
world was never in danger.
Yeah, he knew the outcomes that were going to come about, and he was like, "There's no need for me to interfere." Like, which feels like a literally something that could come out of Doom's mouth. What I just said. So let's get the final scores before we get out of here. So Shamari, again, a little under the weather, so he's not able to join this episode of Hero Talk, but he sends, obviously his regards. He really liked this movie. We of course send him his well wishes. He gave this movie a 8.5. He said that he thought this was a very, very good movie, or very good movie, he said. So he's giving it that 8.5. I like those same sentiments. I give this movie an 8.5. I thought this was really solid. This was like, if it, maybe it wasn't a home run, this was like a double, bases clearing double, or maybe even a triple. Like this was a big at bat for Marvel, and a single was not going to win. And they damn sure could not strike out or fly out. They had to make an extra base hit with this, and I think they did. I think you're seeing with the box office, $118 million in its first weekend, and with the similar to Superman, I think with the good word of mouth they've gotten, I expect that number to increase. I think that making billion-dollar movies right now is almost impossible because of where the box offices are. But I think Superman is definitely looks like it's well on its way to barreling towards us. Maybe an $700 million outtake. I think Marvel could also be seeing a similar thing with this movie and kind of the box office remaining strong in the weeks following this movie coming out. Especially not because they don't have a Superman type movie coming out after them like Superman does. They're the last real big movie of the summer, so they'll be able to really ride out the rest of this box office for the rest of the summer. So they're in that better position in that regard. So the word of mouth is going to be very good. It's already been very good. I think that will affect the box office. And this was a really solid step forward. They have now a Fantastic Four that you're invested in, that you want to see more of, that I'm excited about. They now have, I think I underestimated how important it was to establish a world that I cared about. But it's true. Like it's now this is a world I care about, and it's going to make it a lot more heartbreaking when this world comes apart as we get through Doomsday and Secret Wars. And doing the Silver Surfer and Galactus, those are two. I think it's fair to say iconic Marvel characters, and they were done terribly poorly in the previous iterations. Silver Surfer not because I look, but just the story they told, and then Galactus with story, look, and everything. They did right by those characters, and that was, I think, an important get back for Marvel too. So all in all, a solid movie. Only critiques, I think maybe the movie moved a little slow at certain points in the middle, in the beginning, and in the beginning of the movie, in the first act, and the beginning of the last act. I think there were times where I think I wanted the movie to pick up the pace a little bit, but the cast was phenomenal. How they really emphasize the strengths of the whole entire team and the family dynamic, like I said earlier, that really just they beat you over the head with it in a way that makes this movie feel different than all the other movies you've seen, even movies that have team ups, whether it's Thunderbolts, whether it's Avengers, whether it's what's it called, Guardians of the Galaxy. We've seen so many team up movies now, but this one feels different. I think because they really drove home that family dynamic. So I'm giving this movie a solid 8.5 as well.
Yeah, I'm gonna go 9 out of 10. Like I think
Wow.
this is a really good movie. One of the better Marvel movies we've had in a really long time. Um, I think that this is right there with No Way Home as like a almost like an outlier. Kind of like, oh boy, this we'll have to when we look back at the MCU, we'll be like, yeah, besides Fantastic Four, besides No Way Home, blah blah blah. But no, I mean, I think that this is, I think this was great. I think again the cast was awesome. Um, it shows obviously the potential of these characters that we've all understood, but like it was hard to demonstrate based off of the history of films that these that the Fantastic Four has had. It was all theoretical until this movie. Right now, we can point to these characters and say this is what these characters could be if done well.
Right.
And again, this is the definitive Fantastic Four. These are characters, as we said going into it, but another decision that we talked about that I didn't like that ultimately wound up working was introducing them as a team, right? And not just not peppering them in like into certain movies. Like we were like, oh yeah, let's see Reed Richards in this, and let's see
Right.
Sue Storm in this, and blah blah blah. But doing it this way, and like there is now a ton of potential whenever they decide to do the great convergence of the MCU,
Right.
for these characters to show up in other properties individually. I mean, obviously, people were already talking about Johnny Storm being with Spider-Man, and that certainly has a lot of potential. But the Thing is a character that can show up in a ton of different projects. Reed, obviously, Sue. So I mean,
Yeah, I'm thinking about a Sue. What a Sue interaction?
A ton of long.
A Sue interaction with Namor would be very interesting.
Exactly. I'm thinking about the Thing and the Hulk.
Yep.
Right. Especially since they nerfed the Hulk. The Thing actually is is probably on his level.
He's got a fighting chance now.
Yeah, he's got a real fighting chance. But no, they've created a Fantastic Four that the Marvel Universe deserves, and this movie really highlights why it was so important for them to get the Fantastic Four back, right? And not just the Fantastic Four, but then also the X-Men, Silver Surfer, Galactus, Doctor Doom, and that's why I've been so excited about the idea of a post Secret Wars and the way Kevin Feige's framing it, post Doomsday, but post Doomsday, post Secret Wars Marvel Universe that's going to have all these characters in one world, because that's how it should be. I almost feel like they should, instead of calling it the Mutant Saga, they should just call it like the Excelsior Saga or something like that. Like how Stan Lee framed his initial Marvel Universe.
I love that.
That has all of these different characters now under the same umbrella for the first time in filmmaking ever, and really play into that, and the Fantastic Four being obviously a major aspect of it. And I think really even more than Spider-Man, because again, the Spider-Man thing obviously is an individual character. They did well, but it always still felt like, and they did a great job of obviously I would some would say maybe not a great job, but they tried their best to bring in these MCU characters and yada yada. And this is a different this movie's not even in that. It's not even in the MCU, right? But even just the idea that they're going to be in the MCU is what's so exciting about what they've created. Because again, the Fantastic Four, before this movie came out, it's hard to say because again, it's all theoretical, right? We had ideas of what could work, but every time we've seen it, it hasn't. But this time it worked, and they passed that mission with flying colors. And again, made a great space movie with good villains, um, and a excellent cast. So yeah, Matt Shackman deserves a ton of credit. Um, I think I'll expect to see him on more work with Marvel and probably other stuff, but um, most notably probably being a Fantastic Four sequel. And I don't know what that'll look like. I don't know,
Yeah.
because again, that's going to be a post MCU universe, but man, or post Secret Wars universe, I guess. So I don't know what that's going to look like. That's in modern day, who the villain would be, but we're certainly getting a sequel to this movie, and um, they are now back to being an A-list brand um, in the Marvel superhero lexicon.
And that's where they belong, man. Shout out to everyone involved. Shout out to Kevin Feige, Matt Shackman, the whole cast and crew. Phenomenal job with Fantastic Four, the first steps. Now excited to see what Super Spider-Man brings next year, and of course Doomsday as well. But that's gonna do it for this edition of New Generation Hero Talk. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Of course, you get all of our episodes on the New Generation Podcast Network. You can find that on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and TuneIn. Also, be sure to check us out on YouTube as well, New Generation Media. Follow us on social media, New Generation Pod, New Generation Podcast. And be sure to follow us individually on social media as well. You can find Kendall on Twitter, New Gen Ken, Shamari on Instagram, and Snapchat, MCSham22. Hope Shamari feels better, and we'll see him next week. Follow me on social media. I'm EJ_Stewart on X, actually EJM on Instagram and TikTok. That'll do it for now. Thank you guys so much for checking us out. For Shamari, or who's not here, for Kendall, I'm EJ. Take it easy, guys. Peace.